Chosen ones, listen carefully. The friend who sold you out for a few dollars is sitting in an empty room right now, staring at a phone that stopped ringing the same week the money ran out. That's the exact thing they traded you for, finally showing its true price. You gave them years. You gave them the version of you that only shows up around people who've earned it. The late-night calls, the secrets you never told anyone else, the plans you hadn't even told your own family yet. And somewhere in the middle of all that closeness, they looked at what you trusted them with and decided it was worth cashing in. Not for something huge, not even for something they can point to with pride, for a few dollars, for a favor, for a moment of feeling important in someone else's eyes. That's the number they put on you. And they didn't even flinch signing off on it. Here's the part they didn't calculate. Betrayal for money always comes with an invoice nobody mentions up front. It doesn't get paid the day the deal is made. It gets paid slowly, quietly, in every room they walk into afterward, where the energy just feels a little colder than it used to. You didn't do that to them. You didn't have to. The moment they chose a few dollars over your loyalty, they started paying a bill that never stops coming due. You've probably wondered why you haven't heard much from them since, why the group chats got quiet, why people who used to mention their name in the same breath as yours suddenly go silent when it comes up. That's not coincidence. That's the story writing itself, the way it always does when someone trades a real thing for a cheap one. And chosen one, the story isn't finished. It's only just getting to the part they were hoping you'd never see. Look at where they are right now, compared to where you are. That contrast isn't something you built. It's something that built itself the moment they decided a friendship was a bargaining chip, instead of something sacred. You didn't have to lift a finger to watch it unfold. You just had to keep living, and the natural order of things did the rest, the way it always does when someone trades something priceless for something small enough to spend in a single afternoon. This is the part nobody tells you about betrayal for money. It doesn't just cost the person who gets sold out. It costs the seller more, permanently, in ways that don't show up right away, but never really stop showing up once they start. What you're watching happen to them now isn't an accident. It's the full price of that decision finally arriving, one quiet consequence at a time. And chosen one, none of what's coming next requires you to feel bad for them, to check on them, or to soften what happened into something more forgivable than it was. You're allowed to simply observe. You're allowed to let the story finish itself without your participation. That's not coldness. That's what happens naturally when someone stops handing their piece over to a person who already proved what they'd trade it for. Thank you for being here, chosen one. If this is landing anywhere close to home, hit like and subscribe so this reaches someone else going through the exact same quiet ache right now. This isn't just a video. It's a mirror for anyone who gave loyalty to someone who priced it like pocket change. Let's get into it. Number 1. The price they put on your loyalty. They didn't sell you out for something life-changing. That's the part that should sting the most, but it's also the part that tells you everything. If they had done it for something enormous, you could almost understand the temptation. But a few dollars, a small favor, a cheap moment of being noticed, that's what your years of loyalty were worth to them when the moment came. Think about what that says, not about you, but about them. A person who sells you out cheap was never holding you at a high price to begin with. They were just waiting for a small enough offer to prove it. Ask yourself honestly what that says about the years you gave. Loyalty that took a decade to build got measured against a number so small it barely registers as a real decision. That imbalance is the whole story in one sentence, and it's the kind of imbalance that never resolves in the betrayer's favor. No amount of apologizing later rebalances an equation like that. The math was set the moment they signed off on the deal, and math doesn't care how sorry someone feels once the numbers finally come due. You gave loyalty like it was expensive, because it is. Real loyalty costs something. It costs discretion when gossip would have been easier. It costs showing up when staying home would have been simpler. It costs defending someone's name in a room where tearing it down would have made you look clever. You paid all of that without blinking, without needing thanks, because that's what loyalty actually looks like when it's real. And they took that whole investment and traded it for less than the price of a decent meal. Here's what they didn't expect. The moment they made that trade, they didn't just lose you. They lost the version of themselves that people used to trust without questioning, because word travels. Not always loud, not always fast, but it travels. Someone always finds out who sold what for how much. And once people know a person's loyalty has a price tag that low, they stop handing them anything worth protecting. No more secrets, no more real conversations, no more being let in past the surface. They didn't just cash you out. They downgraded their whole future. You might be sitting with a question right now. Why does it still bother you, even knowing what they did? Because betrayal from a stranger is expected. Betrayal from someone who knew your real name, your real story, your real fears. That one lands somewhere deeper. That's not weakness. That's proof you loved with your whole chest, and they gambled with it like it was nothing. The universe sees that difference clearly, even when people around you don't say it out loud. And here's the twist they never saw coming. The same cheapness that made them sell you out is the exact thing that's going to make everyone else sell them out too. People who trade loyalty for a few dollars don't stop at one person. They repeat the pattern until nobody's left who'll answer their calls. You weren't the exception. You were just the first name on a list that's getting shorter every single day. Number 2. Why money never stays with people who steal trust. There's an old truth that nobody likes hearing until they watch it happen in real time. Money taken through betrayal doesn't behave like money earned honestly. It doesn't build anything. It doesn't sit still long enough to grow into security. It moves through a person's hands like it's trying to get away from them, because on some level, it is. You can already see it happening. The same person who sold you out for a few dollars still doesn't have anything solid to show for it. No stability, no real gain. Just the empty spot where your loyalty used to sit, and a little bit of cash that vanished faster than the friendship did. Watch closely, and you'll see the pattern repeat. Whatever came in fast tends to leave just as fast, because money gained by breaking trust was never anchored to anything stable in the first place. It arrives like a loan nobody agreed to, and leaves like one nobody can stop. Think about what actually gets exchanged in a betrayal like that. It's never a fair trade. They gave up years of trust, history, and a person who genuinely had their back, for a number that probably didn't even cover a week of comfort. That kind of math never works out for the person doing the selling. It works out for exactly nobody, but it especially never works out for them, because guilt has a way of taxing every dollar it touches. Even if they don't call it guilt, even if they tell themselves it was nothing. The body keeps score, even when the mouth denies it. You've probably noticed something else too. The people who profit off of betraying someone rarely get to enjoy it in peace. There's always a flinch when your name comes up. There's always a slight hesitation before they answer a question about you. That's not paranoia on your part. That's the universe making sure the transaction never fully settles. Real peace doesn't come from money gained by selling someone out. It comes from knowing you built something honestly, and they know, somewhere quiet inside themselves, that they didn't. Here's the part that should give you a strange kind of comfort. You didn't need to do anything to set this in motion. You didn't chase them down. You didn't demand an explanation. You didn't even have to confront them. The imbalance corrects itself. It always does. Because loyalty and money don't trade evenly, no matter how confident someone feels the day they make the deal. The confidence fades first. Then the money follows. Then the isolation moves in and finishes the job. And chosen one, that isolation isn't punishment from you. It's the natural result of a life built on trading people instead of keeping them. When you sell someone out once, you prove you'll do it again, given the right price. And people remember that. They remember it in the way they hold back around that person now, in the way conversations stay shallow, in the way nobody hands them anything real anymore. That's not karma being dramatic. That's just consequence, quietly doing its job. Number 3, the silence after they got what they wanted. There's a specific kind of silence that follows betrayal, and it's not the silence people expect. It's not loud regret. It's not dramatic confrontation. It's just quiet, empty. The kind of silence that shows up right after someone gets exactly what they thought they wanted and realizes it doesn't feel the way they imagined. You've probably sensed it already, even from a distance. The energy shifted the moment the deal was done. Whatever high they thought they'd feel from cashing you out didn't last nearly as long as they expected. Notice how much energy it takes to maintain a story that isn't true. Every version they tell has to be managed, remembered, adjusted depending on the audience. That kind of upkeep is exhausting, and exhaustion always shows, eventually, in the silence that follows. That silence is telling on them. When someone stays loud and proud after doing something they know was wrong, that's one kind of person. But when the noise disappears fast, when they go quiet, when they stop bringing it up entirely, that's guilt finding cracks in the story they told themselves. They convinced themselves the money mattered more than the friendship. But convincing yourself of something and actually believing it are two very different things. The silence is where the difference lives. You might notice they've gotten harder to read lately, less talkative in group settings, slower to laugh at things that used to make them laugh instantly. That's not maturity. That's the weight of knowing what they did settling into their daily life, whether they admit it or not. People don't usually announce their regret. They just get quieter, smaller, more careful about which rooms they walk into and which conversations they avoid. Here's the part that matters most for you right now. You don't need their silence to turn into an apology. You don't need them to say the words out loud for the truth to be real. The silence itself is the confirmation. It's the proof that somewhere under the excuses they gave themselves, they know exactly what they did and exactly what it cost them. You don't have to extract that admission from them. Time already did the extracting for you. And while they sit in that silence, something else is happening on your end, something they probably didn't expect. Your life didn't stop just because they stepped out of it. If anything, the space they left behind is filling with people who never would have sold you out for spare change. That's the real shift here. Not revenge, not confrontation. Just the slow, steady process of the wrong people leaving so the right ones have room to show up. Number 4. How fast their new friends started disappearing too. Here's something that always happens after a betrayal like this, and it rarely gets talked about. The people someone sells you out for almost never stick around either. Whatever small circle they thought they were buying loyalty from with your name, it doesn't hold. It can't. Because anyone willing to build a connection off someone else's betrayal was never building something real to begin with. They were just enjoying the show while it lasted. Real connection takes time to test. It survives disagreements, boring weeks, ordinary days with nothing exciting happening. Whatever they built off the excitement of betraying you never had to pass that test, which is exactly why it's already falling apart on its own. You've probably already seen the early signs. The same people they got close to right after everything happened, the ones who seemed so thrilled to have that little bit of gossip, that little bit of leverage, they're already pulling back. Interest, that starts with betrayal, fades the same way it started, quickly and without warning. Because once the excitement of the drama wears off, there's nothing solid left holding those new connections together. No history, no real trust, No reason to stay once the entertainment value runs out. This is the part that stings for them, even if they'll never say it out loud. They traded a real, long-standing bond for a temporary audience, and that audience is already losing interest. The same energy that made your friendship strong, the years, the loyalty, the actual history, that's exactly what's missing from every relationship they've built since. Shortcuts don't build anything that lasts. They just create the illusion of connection long enough to distract from what was actually lost. You might wonder why this matters to you at all, now that they're not in your life anymore. It matters because it confirms something you probably already suspected. What they did wasn't really about you being replaceable. It was about them chasing something cheap and temporary because they didn't understand the value of what they already had. And now they're finding out the hard way, watching that cheap version of connection dissolve exactly the way it was built to. Meanwhile, you're not experiencing any of that instability. The people around you now, the ones who stayed, the ones who never needed convincing to have your back, that foundation isn't going anywhere. That's the real difference between loyalty built over years and loyalty bought for a few dollars. One survives contact with real life. The other collapses the second the novelty wears off. Number 5. The moment people started asking questions about them. There's always a tipping point after a betrayal like this, a moment where the story stops being about you and starts being about them. You've probably felt that shift already, even if nobody said it directly. People who once assumed the worst about the situation are starting to ask different questions now. Not why did you do what you did, but why did they do what they did? That shift in direction is not small. That's the story finally landing where it was always supposed to. People rarely say these questions out loud at first. They just start treating someone a little differently, a little more carefully, a little less openly. That shift is quiet, but it's unmistakable once you know what to look for, and it's already happening around them. Here's why this happens every single time. People are more observant than they let on. They notice patterns. They notice who stays consistent and who changes their story depending on who's listening. And eventually, someone puts the pieces together and starts wondering out loud why a person would trade a real friendship for something so small. Once that question gets asked once, it doesn't stay contained. It spreads the same way any honest question does, quietly, persistently, until it reaches rooms they never expected it to reach. You didn't have to plant that question. You didn't have to whisper it into anyone's ear. You just had to keep living your life with the same consistency you always had, while they kept shifting their story to fit whoever they were talking to that day. Consistency is loud in its own way. It doesn't shout, but it holds up under pressure. And when people compare your steady behavior to their shifting explanations, the answer becomes obvious without you saying a single word. This is the part where their control over the narrative slips completely. For a while, they probably assumed nobody would care enough to dig deeper. They counted on people being too busy, too distracted, too disinterested to connect the dots. But people always connect the dots eventually, especially when the betrayed party never has to lie to defend themselves. Truth doesn't need editing. It stays the same, no matter who's asking. That alone starts separating you from them in everyone else's eyes. And now, chosen one, that separation is becoming permanent. The people who matter are recognizing exactly who kept their word and who cashed it in. That recognition doesn't need to be loud or dramatic. It just needs to be accurate. And once it becomes accurate in enough people's minds, the version of events they tried to control isn't theirs to control anymore. Number 6. Why nobody warned them what betrayal costs. It's strange how people who plan a betrayal rarely think past the moment of the betrayal itself. They spend so much energy figuring out how to do it, how to justify it, how to make the exchange feel worth it in the moment, that they never stop to consider what comes after. Nobody sits a person down before they sell out a friend and explains the actual cost. Nobody warns them that trust, once broken publicly or privately, doesn't quietly reset itself once the initial excitement fades. It just sits there, permanently altering how people see them from that point forward. Nobody warns anyone about this because most people never think they'll be the one making that choice. They imagine betrayal as something other people do, until the moment arrives and the price looks tempting enough. By then, the lesson only comes from living it. You've probably realized this already, but it's worth saying clearly. Betrayal isn't a one-time transaction. It's a label. Once someone finds out a person is capable of selling out real loyalty for a small enough price, that label follows them into every future relationship. Every new friend eventually hears the story, whether from you directly or through the natural way information travels. And once they hear it, a part of them will always wonder, quietly, if they could be next. This is the invisible cost nobody warns people about before they make a decision like that. It's not just about losing you. It's about losing the ability to be fully trusted by anyone who knows the full story. People can forgive a lot of things, mistakes, arguments, even long stretches of distance. But selling someone out for money leaves a specific kind of mark because it reveals exactly what a person will do under the right amount of pressure or temptation. And once that's revealed, it's almost impossible to convince anyone otherwise. You didn't need to warn them either. Some lessons only make sense in hindsight, and this is one of them. They had to actually live through the fallout, the quiet distancing, the friendships that never fully form the way they used to understand what the warning would have meant. Now they're learning it the hard way, in real time, without anyone standing beside them to soften the blow. And here's the part that closes this chapter of the story. You don't have to feel sorry for them learning this lesson late. You didn't create the cost, you just happened to be the first person who showed them the price actually exists. Everyone after you will benefit from a lesson they should have learned before they ever considered selling out someone who genuinely loved them. Number 7. The empty room where loyalty used to live. Picture a room that used to be full of inside jokes, full of shared history, full of the kind of comfort that only comes from years of showing up for each other. That room used to belong to the two of you. Now it's empty on their side, and it's staying that way, because loyalty doesn't move back in once it's been sold off for a fraction of what it was worth. You can already sense it if you think about it honestly. There's no replacing what that friendship was. Not with new acquaintances, not with new circles, not with anyone willing to fill the space with something shallow. Some spaces are never meant to be refilled quickly, and that's not a flaw in a person's life. It's proof that whatever filled that space mattered enough to leave a shape behind. The absence itself becomes the evidence of how real it once was. They know this too, even if they'll never admit it directly. There's a specific kind of quiet that settles over someone when they realize the connection they gave up was rarer than they understood at the time. Real loyalty, the kind that costs something to maintain, doesn't come around often. Most people go their whole lives without experiencing someone who defends them consistently, who keeps their secrets without needing to be asked twice, who shows up without being chased down first. They had that, and they traded it for a number so small it's almost embarrassing to say out loud. Now that room stays empty because nobody else is willing to fill it the same way. New friendships built on gossip or convenience don't have the depth to replace what was lost. They might fill the silence for a little while, but they can't fill the actual space, the specific shape loyalty leaves behind when it's gone. That's the part that haunts people quietly, long after the initial drama has died down. Not the argument, not the falling out. Just the empty room that used to have someone real standing in it. You, on the other hand, aren't experiencing that same emptiness. Your life kept moving. Your other relationships kept deepening. The space they left behind didn't stay hollow, because you had more than one source of real connection to begin with. That's the difference between someone who built their life around genuine loyalty and someone who was willing to gamble a single relationship away for a quick payoff. One person adjusts and keeps growing. The other sits with the silence, wondering why nothing since has felt quite the same. And chosen one, that empty room isn't going anywhere for them. It's going to sit there as a permanent reminder of what real loyalty actually felt like, compared to everything that came after it. That's not something you did to them, that's something they did to themselves, and now they get to live in the quiet of it. Number 8. How your peace became their punishment. Here's something that confuses people who betray someone for money. They expect to see visible suffering. They expect tears, breakdowns, public outbursts, some kind of dramatic proof that the betrayal worked exactly the way they hoped. Instead, they got the opposite. They got your peace. And nothing frustrates a person who was hoping for chaos more than watching the person they hurt continue moving forward without giving them the reaction they wanted. There's a particular kind of frustration that comes from wanting someone to suffer and watching them simply continue living instead. That frustration doesn't go away on its own. It just sits there, unresolved, feeding the very isolation they were hoping to avoid. Your calm isn't an accident. It's the result of choosing not to hand them any more power over your emotions than they already took. You didn't scream. You didn't beg for an explanation. You didn't chase them down demanding they justify what they did. You simply let the situation exist as it was and kept living your life with the same steadiness you always carried. That steadiness is exactly what unsettles them the most, because it proves the betrayal didn't break you the way they assumed it would. Think about what that does to someone who convinced themselves the trade was worth it. If you had fallen apart, they could have told themselves the story made sense, that you were dramatic anyway, that the friendship wasn't as important as it seemed. But your peace removes that excuse entirely. It shows them, without you saying a single word, that the loyalty they sold off wasn't holding you together. It was simply something you gave freely, and its absence doesn't define your worth or your stability. That's the part that becomes its own kind of consequence. They don't get the satisfaction of watching you crumble. Instead, they get to watch you continue existing, calmly, steadily, without needing their presence to feel complete. And every time your name comes up in conversation, described as doing fine, moving forward, thriving even, that peace lands like a much sharper reminder than any confrontation ever could. You don't need to perform happiness for their benefit. This isn't about proving anything to them specifically. It's simply the natural outcome of someone who built their sense of self on more than one relationship, one friendship, one source of validation. Your peace was never dependent on their loyalty in the first place. It just took their betrayal to reveal how solid that peace really was. Number 9. The debt that money could never pay off. There's a kind of debt that doesn't show up on any account, doesn't get tracked by any bank, and doesn't disappear just because the initial transaction is complete. It's the debt someone accumulates the moment they choose to betray a real relationship for a small, temporary gain. No amount of money can settle that kind of debt, because it was never really about money to begin with. It was about trust, about years of history, about the kind of loyalty that doesn't get manufactured overnight. Debt like this doesn't arrive with a due date, which is exactly what makes it so unsettling. It just accumulates quietly in the background of every future relationship, showing up as hesitation, distance, and doubt that never fully explains itself. You've probably noticed that whatever they got out of the deal didn't actually solve anything for them. Maybe it covered a bill. Maybe it bought them a moment of feeling included somewhere. But none of that addressed the actual debt they took on the moment they decided your loyalty was worth less than a quick payoff. That debt compounds quietly. It shows up in the way people hesitate to trust them fully. It shows up in the way opportunities that require reliability tend to pass them by. It shows up in every relationship going forward that starts with a little less faith than it should, because word travels about what they're capable of when the price is right. Here's the part that makes this especially heavy for them, even if they never say it out loud. Debts built on broken trust don't get erased by time the way people hope. They get carried forward, quietly influencing how people interact with them, how much they're willing to invest emotionally, how far anyone is willing to go before pulling back at the first sign of tension. That's the real cost, not the disapproval of one person. The permanent adjustment in how everyone treats them going forward, whether they realize the cause or not. You, meanwhile, don't carry that same debt. You paid your dues in loyalty for years and walked away from the situation with your integrity fully intact. That's not a small thing. That's the entire difference between someone who built genuine connection and someone who cashed it in the first time a cheap offer came along. Integrity doesn't accumulate debt, it accumulates trust, and trust compounds in the opposite direction, quietly building a reputation that opens doors instead of closing them. That's the quiet advantage of staying honest, even when it costs you something in the moment. It never runs out the way borrowed trust eventually does. And chosen one, that's the real reason this situation keeps unfolding in your favor, without you having to do anything dramatic. You're not carrying the weight they created. You're simply continuing to live the way you always did. Honestly, consistently, without needing to manufacture anything to prove your worth. The debt belongs entirely to them now, and it's not going anywhere soon. Number 10. Why karma waited this long on purpose. You might have wondered, somewhere in the quieter moments, why karma didn't show up immediately, why the consequences didn't land the same week the betrayal happened. That delay wasn't a mistake. It wasn't the universe forgetting to follow through. It was timing, deliberate and precise, waiting for the moment when the impact would actually mean something, instead of fading into a temporary lesson they could shrug off too quickly. Patience isn't something you have to manufacture here. The timing was never yours to control in the first place. All you had to do was keep living honestly while the consequences arranged themselves in the background, on a schedule nobody could rush. If consequences had hit right away, they might have written the whole thing off as bad luck, unrelated to the choice they made. But karma doesn't work on convenient timelines. It waits until someone has had enough time to settle comfortably into the belief that they got away with something, and then it dismantles that belief piece by piece, slowly enough that they can't deny where it's coming from. That's exactly what's happening now. The isolation, the fading friendships, the quiet unraveling of whatever stability they thought that money would buy them, all of it arriving right when they thought the story was over. This is the part that makes the whole situation feel less like coincidence and more like something intentional. Every domino falling now traces directly back to that one decision. The timing isn't random, it's designed to make the connection impossible to ignore. You didn't need to remind them what they did. Life is doing that reminding for you, in a way that feels far more permanent than any conversation you could have had directly with them. You also didn't need to track their progress or keep tabs on what was happening in their life. The updates found their way to you anyway, the way truth usually does when enough people start noticing the same pattern. That's not you seeking revenge. That's simply information traveling the same paths it always travels, landing wherever it's meant to land. And here's the piece that matters most for your own peace of mind. You don't have to wait for this to resolve completely before you move forward. Karma operates on its own schedule, not yours. Your job was never to make sure they paid for what they did. Your job was simply to keep living honestly, and the rest unfolded exactly the way it was always going to unfold, on a timeline that had nothing to do with your patience or your forgiveness. Number 11. The people who saw it coming and said nothing. There's always a group of people who notice the warning signs before anyone else does, the ones who saw the cracks forming long before the actual betrayal happened, but chose to stay quiet instead of saying anything. Maybe they didn't want to get involved. Maybe they assumed it wasn't their place. Maybe they simply didn't think it would go as far as it did. Whatever the reason, their silence didn't protect anyone. It just delayed the moment where the truth became impossible to avoid. It's worth remembering that silence from bystanders says more about their own comfort than about the truth of what happened. Their quiet didn't change what occurred. It only delayed how quickly everyone else caught up to what you already knew. And once people do catch up, they rarely go back to unseeing what they now understand. That's the quiet cost of hesitation. It doesn't erase the truth. It only postpones the moment everyone finally agrees on it. You might feel a flicker of frustration thinking about that now, wondering why nobody said anything sooner. That frustration is valid, but it's worth remembering something important. Their silence was never really about you. It was about their own discomfort with confrontation, their own hesitation to get in the middle of something that felt messy. That doesn't excuse it, but it does explain it. People protect their own comfort far more often than they protect the people they claim to care about, and that's simply a pattern you're seeing play out in real time. Here's what's changing now, though. The same people who stayed quiet before are starting to speak up after the fact, now that the consequences are visible and undeniable. It's easier to admit you saw something coming once the outcome proves you right. That's not particularly brave of them, but it does confirm something you already suspected. The signs were there. Other people noticed them too. You weren't imagining the shift in behavior, the small inconsistencies, the moments that didn't quite add up. You were simply the one who trusted despite noticing them, because that's what loyalty does. It gives people the benefit of the doubt longer than it probably should. You don't need their acknowledgement now to validate what you already know happened. But it's worth noticing anyway, because it removes any lingering doubt about whether you overreacted or misread the situation. You didn't. Other people saw it too. They just didn't have the same stake in speaking up that you eventually did. And chosen one, this is where you get to release any guilt about missing the signs earlier. Trusting someone fully isn't a flaw, it's a strength that some people take advantage of, and the responsibility for that always belongs to the person doing the taking, never to the person who simply chose to believe in someone they cared about. Number 12. Why losing everything woke them up too late. There's a specific kind of clarity that only shows up after someone has already lost the thing they needed to keep. It doesn't arrive early enough to prevent the damage. It arrives right after, when the friendships have already thinned out, when the money is already gone, when the isolation has already settled in as a daily reality instead of a temporary consequence. That's the position they're in now, finally understanding the value of what they gave away, right at the moment when getting it back is no longer an option. Clarity that shows up after the damage is done still counts as clarity, but it rarely comes with the option to undo anything. That's the part people forget when they gamble on a relationship, thinking they can always fix it later if it doesn't work out. You've probably heard secondhand that they've had moments of reflection, maybe even regret. That's not surprising. Most people don't fully grasp what they had until the absence of it becomes impossible to ignore. But understanding the mistake after the fact doesn't undo it. It doesn't restore the trust that took years to build and one decision to destroy. It just confirms, painfully and directly, that the choice they made wasn't worth what they thought it was at the time. This is the part that separates real growth from simple regret. Growth requires change, accountability, and often the willingness to face the person you hurt directly. Regret, on the other hand, can exist quietly, privately, without ever leading to any real action. From what's visible so far, this looks a lot more like regret than growth, the kind that shows up in isolation, in quiet reflection, without ever translating into the kind of honest conversation that might actually repair something. You don't owe them the opportunity to test whether their regret is real. That's not selfishness. That's simply protecting the same loyalty they proved they weren't willing to protect when it mattered. If genuine change happens somewhere down the line, that's between them and their own conscience. It doesn't require your involvement, your forgiveness, or your presence to be valid. Some lessons are simply meant to be carried alone, and this happens to be one of theirs to carry, not yours to help lighten. And here's what matters most for you moving forward. Their awakening, however late it came, isn't your responsibility to manage. You already gave what you had to give. The lesson landing late for them doesn't create any obligation on your part to soften the impact or step back into a role you already fulfilled fully and honestly the first time around. Number 13. The comparison they can't escape anymore. Somewhere along the way, people started comparing the two of you, whether either of you asked for it or not. It's a natural thing that happens after a betrayal like this becomes known. People look at how you handled everything, calmly, honestly, without dragging anyone through unnecessary drama, and then they look at how the situation unfolded for the person who did the betraying. The contrast writes itself, without needing any commentary from you at all. Comparisons like this tend to settle quietly into people's minds and stay there. Nobody needs to announce the conclusion out loud for it to shape how they treat each of you going forward, and that shift rarely reverses itself once it's made. This comparison isn't something you're actively encouraging. You're not out there making a case for yourself or building a narrative designed to make them look worse. You're simply living your life the way you always have, and that consistency naturally highlights the instability on their end. People notice when someone remains steady after being wronged. They also notice when someone unravels after doing the wronging. The two paths tell their own story without any narration needed. Here's why this comparison bothers them more than they'll ever admit. It's one thing to face judgment from strangers who don't know the full story. It's another thing entirely to watch people who know both of you quietly draw their own conclusions based on nothing but observed behavior. There's no argument to win against that kind of quiet judgment because it's not built on accusations. It's built on patterns that anyone paying attention can see clearly. You don't need to participate in this comparison to benefit from it. You don't need to bring it up in conversation or point out the differences yourself. The people who matter are already noticing, already drawing their own lines between who stayed consistent and who didn't. That kind of recognition tends to be quiet, but it's also permanent, shaping how people approach both of you in every future interaction. And chosen one, this is the part where you get to simply exist without needing to defend yourself further. The comparison does the work you never had to do. You don't have to prove your character. It's already visible in the calm, steady way you handled something that could have easily turned you bitter, but didn't. Number 14. The final truth they'll never say out loud. Here's the truth sitting underneath everything that's happened since the betrayal took place. The one thing they'll likely never admit directly, not to you, not to anyone else, maybe not even fully to themselves. They know they made a mistake that money could never justify. They know the friendship they traded away was worth infinitely more than whatever they gained from selling it out. And they know that no amount of new connections, new distractions, or new excuses will ever quite fill the space that loyalty used to occupy. Some truths are heavier precisely because they're never spoken. A person can carry a private understanding of their own mistake for years without ever giving anyone else the satisfaction of hearing it confirmed. And that private weight doesn't get lighter with time. That truth doesn't need to be spoken out loud to be real. You don't need a confession, an apology, or any kind of formal acknowledgement for the situation to be exactly what it is. Some truths exist, whether or not anyone says them, and this is one of them. They sold something rare for something cheap, and now they're living inside the consequences of that decision, quietly, without the friendship, without the stability, without the version of their life that included someone who genuinely had their back, without needing to be paid for it. Number 15. Why reaching out now means nothing. At some point, chosen one, they might try to reach back out. Maybe it starts with a message that opens with, "Hey, I've been thinking about you." Maybe it's a comment left on something you posted, quietly testing whether the door is still open, even a crack. Maybe it comes second-hand, through a mutual friend passing along a version of "they miss you," dressed up to sound sincere. Whatever shape it takes, pay close attention to the timing, because the timing tells you almost everything you need to know about why they're really reaching out now. Real remorse doesn't wait for the money to run out. It doesn't wait for the new friends to disappear or for the isolation to become unbearable. If they were truly sorry for what they did, that sorrow would have shown up the moment they realized the weight of it, not months later, right when their circumstances got uncomfortable enough to make reconnecting look appealing again. That's not healing reaching out to you. That's convenience wearing the costume of change. You don't owe anyone access back into your life just because their other options ran out. A door that only unlocks when it benefits the person on the other side was never really about you to begin with. It was about what you could offer them, then and now. Genuine accountability looks different from this. It shows up without asking for anything in return. It names the specific harm without softening it into something vague. It doesn't require you to respond, forgive, or reopen anything at all in order to feel complete. What you're seeing instead is a request disguised as reflection, and chosen one, you're allowed to see the difference clearly. This is also the moment where your own boundaries get tested the most, because part of you might still remember the good years, the version of them before the betrayal, the friendship that once felt uncomplicated. That memory is real, and it's allowed to exist without obligating you to act on it. Missing what something used to be isn't the same as needing it back in its current form. You can hold both truths at once, the fondness for what was, and the clarity about what it became, without confusing one for permission to return to it. And here's the part that matters most going forward. Whatever they're hoping to gain by reaching out now, whether it's comfort, forgiveness, or simply a way back into a life that felt steadier with you in it, that outcome was never guaranteed to them in the first place. Loyalty doesn't restock itself on demand. It has to be rebuilt slowly, consistently, without an agenda, over a length of time that actually proves something. If that process isn't happening, if all you're seeing is a message with no substance behind it, then reaching out now means exactly what it looks like. Nothing more than timing, and timing alone was never enough to earn back what they gave away so easily. And if, somewhere down the road, they do put in the real work, the consistent kind, the kind that asks for nothing and simply shows up differently over a long stretch of time, that's a conversation you can have when and if you're ready for it, on your terms, not theirs. Nothing about protecting your peace right now requires you to promise anything about the future. You're allowed to leave that door exactly where it is, closed for the moment, without deciding forever what happens to it later. You, meanwhile, don't need their silence to feel like an ending. You've already moved forward. The people who stayed, the connections that never needed testing, the peace that comes from knowing your loyalty was never for sale, all of that remains fully intact on your side of the story. That's the real difference between the two of you now. Not who was right or wrong in some abstract sense, but who built a life that held up under pressure, and who built one that collapsed the moment a small enough offer came along. This isn't about revenge, and it never needed to be. It's about the natural weight of consequence, finding its way back to the source, the way it almost always does, without needing you to push it there yourself. You didn't have to expose them, you didn't have to warn anyone, you just had to keep being who you always were, and the contrast did the rest of the work on its own. Somewhere down the line, someone new is going to come into your life and offer you the kind of loyalty that doesn't come with a hidden price tag. And when that happens, you'll recognize it instantly, because you'll know exactly what the absence of it looked like. That's not a small gift, even if it came wrapped in something painful. Pain that teaches you discernment is not wasted pain. It's tuition, paid in full, for a lesson most people don't learn until it's cost them something they can never fully get back. You now know precisely what real loyalty feels like compared to the cheap imitation of it, and that knowledge will protect you for the rest of your life, long after this particular chapter has closed for good. This is the beginning of something, not the end of anything. The friendship ending wasn't the final chapter of your story. It was simply the moment the wrong character got written out, so the right ones would finally have room to walk in. Nobody warns you that closure sometimes looks like silence instead of an apology. But that silence is still closure, and you're allowed to accept it as complete without waiting for anything more from them. So let this be the final word on it, chosen one. You gave real loyalty to someone who measured it in dollars instead of years. That was never a reflection of your worth. It was only ever a reflection of theirs. And now, while they sit with everything that decision cost them, you get to keep walking forward, lighter, clearer, and finally free of a debt that was always theirs to carry, not yours. If this story felt familiar, if some part of it landed exactly where it needed to, drop a 77 in the comments so I know it reached you the way it was meant to. And if you want to help this message find the next person who needs to hear it, a like, a subscribe, or a super thanks goes further than you know. Thanks for watching, chosen one. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care and goodbye.